Hello friends, so you see that? You see that giant stack? That's what I have to show to you guys today. Welcome back, my name is Mel, and obviously today is my fall book haul, but that stack has been accumulating for like 3 months. So it's time. It is time for me to show you guys some books that I've bought. Honestly, I'm hoping that is all of them because there are so many that I have like put on my shelves and I don't remember if I like hauled them before I put them on my shelf, especially the indie books. So I may go grab a couple of those, but I do have lots and lots of books to share with you guys today. So I've got my coffee. Do you have yours? And I guess let's just jump in. I don't really have a particular order for these. I'm just gonna kind of grab and show you guys. They're not gonna be like sectioned out by genre or anything. The first one is Looking Glass Down by Catriona Ward. This is a horror book and it is her newest. I gave Last House on Needless Street 5 stars, loved it. Did not love Sundial quite as much, but I am very hopeful for this one that it's gonna give me all of those spooky and like just mind warping vibes. This is about a guy that lives in Maine and he is writing a book, but this may be the last book that he ever writes, and he starts to get like the book and real life mixed up. I've heard it's kind of weird, it's kind of like mind-bending, and that's what I'm hoping to get from this. So very excited to read that. And then we also have the sequel to Blood Mercy, which is Blood Solace by Bella Roth. This is a vampire romance, and it is a high epic fantasy vampire romance that has a lot of like courtly politics, and it doesn't have just like this huge overarching plot yet, but a really cool world about Hespertine, which are the vampires. But I love the spin and the like world building that is created about the Hespertine in here. Obviously this is a fantasy romance, but I loved the character development and everything in book 1, and I'm very excited to get to this sequel. Then we have One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This is not going to be the only Olivia Blake that you see in this vlog. I actually bought this and Masters of Death, but Masters of Death is in the pile, so we'll get to it in a minute. This is about, I think, mobster witches in New York, and honestly you just kind of sold me with that description right there. I know Erin from Booked and Busy really liked this one, and I liked the Atlas 6 pretty well. Did not love Atlas Paradox, so I'm hoping that this will still work for me. Honestly, I have this one and Masters of Death. If I don't like either one of these, I will probably give up on Olivia Blake, but it just gives me fall vibes, and so I'm very excited to get to this one hopefully pretty soon. Then I don't think that I have hauled Seeds of War by Juan Silva. This is one of the entries in the SPF B09. I don't think it's a finalist, at least as of right now, but it says he ran like the monster he was and the smoke followed. It's following 3 different points of view. One is a single mother, and she is a war veteran turned crime boss. And then we have got a petty thief and a feared mercenary. So I'm very excited to read this one. I love the cover of this, and I've heard some really good things about it. Then we have A Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. This is a fantasy romance that I have heard incredible things about, and I feel like I've read this, but if I did, it was when I was like 13 and I do not remember it at all, and I think I actually may be getting it confused with a different series. But Riley Marie absolutely adores this series. Honestly, everybody I've ever heard that's read this adores this series, and so it just feels like it's time for me to read it. Maria V. Snyder will also be at a Polycon, so I definitely want to get to at least this first book before I go to a Polycon. And it's obviously about a woman that is a poisoner. She was accused of murder and she is about to be executed, but she has been ordered an extraordinary reprieve. She is going to be the king's like poison tester, but the chief of security does not want to leave that to chance, and so he actually poisons her every single day, and the only thing keeping her alive is the antidote that he feeds her, and she's trying to escape this new dilemma. There is disasters coming, and it sounds really good. I am excited to give this a try because I've heard such amazing things about it. Then we have The Worded Man by Peter V. Brett. I was actually waiting on this copy of this book to come out before I started buying these because I I wasn't really feeling the old covers. They're not great. I'll put up the old covers up here. Not a fan. Like this much better. It actually has, I don't know if you can see it, like this on the spine, but I think all of the spines are actually going to line up together to make like a spine art, and I just love that. But this is following a young boy, Aiden, I believe, and this is a world where demons come every single night and they have to put up wards in order to keep the demons out, but they're not always successful, and there are apparently 3 survivors that are going to try to go beyond the wards to understand the secrets of the past and why the demons are coming back in the way that they are now. I have heard good things about this, especially this first book. Dad loved it, and I read the first chapter, really enjoyed it. I did start this book, full disclosure, but I ended up deciding to put it down because the audiobook was not fantastic. It's just an older book and it hasn't been reproduced, and so combined with the not great audio quality and the guy, he mumbles, I just was having a hard time with it, so I think this definitely needs to be a physical read for me, so I'm hoping to get back to it very soon. And then we have What Kind of Mother by Clay McCoy Chapman. I am so excited to read this. I have heard that it is complete and total what the crap, what the F is all I've seen on reviews of this book. I know that it is gothic and about a teenage mother that decides to go back to her hometown and things are not going well. I know that it has crabs, but that's about all I know. And honestly, I think that that's all I want to know. Okay, next up we have The Coven by Harper L. Woods. I'm not really sure what order these videos are going to come up in, but you may have already seen the witch vlog before this actually goes live, so you know my thoughts on this one, but I wanted a physical copy of it, so I did purchase this. It's very tiny. This is following a witch who was raised by her father to basically overthrow the Hallowed Coven, and the Hallowed Coven is made up of witches, but they're immortal and they're made of bones. And then there are these vampiric type creatures that have to feed off the witches in order to survive. They're basically demons in a mortal body, and they feed off of witches in order to survive. And she has earth magic from her mother, but they always try to keep the magics from intermingling, and the necromancy line was thought to have died out. And she has necromantic magic as well. This is not like a paranormal fantasy romance, and that's why I wanted to include it in the witch vlog. Then we have Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is her newest book in a brand new fantasy world. I think it involves like a succubus type story. It's about a world that was destroyed by gods and our main character that has intuition that tells her to go and save a traveling prince. And apparently the voice inside her blazes with warning. Today he'll bring her joy, one day he'll be her doom. And she has to choose to follow her intuition or her heart, and her heart may be her downfall. I was very excited to read this one initially, and some of the reviews that have come out have made me a little bit more leery, just because I do hear that it is a little bit more instant attraction romance heavy, which is something that I complained about not being in the later Flynn Blood Nash series, but I also still want a really good fantasy world to go along with my romance, and I'm afraid this one might be a little bit too smut romance heavy for me, but I still want to give it a try. I still like Jennifer L. Armentrout's writing, so I'm curious about this one. Next up, we have books 4 and 5 in the Elise Kova Heir Awakens series. I have been muddling my way through this series over the course of the latter half of the year and really enjoying them. This is following Vala, who is the last known air sorcerer, and she doesn't want to be an air sorcerer. She just wants to live her life as a library apprentice, and one day she ends up saving one of the prince's lives and gets herself in a little bit of trouble. This is also involving a war. There's going to be an overarching plot. I am only on book 3, but after reading the first 2, I definitely wanted to have the sequels as well. I found it. Here's Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. This one is vampires and haunted houses, and I've heard that it was a bit more quirky than I was originally thinking it was after reading the first chapter prologue of this, but still excited to give it a try. I did like the first 1 to 2 pages of it, so very hopeful. In the back it says there's a game that immortals play. There's only one rule: don't lose. That sounds interesting. I'm excited to try it. And then we have finally the trade paperback copy of Empire of Silence by Krista Urrutia. This one is a sci-fi fantasy that I have had on my TBR, or at least on my want to read list, for ages, but it was only in mass market, like the little bitty mass market, and I hate mass market, and so I just had been putting it off, honestly. The UK paperbacks were pretty, but the hardcovers are non-existent. They are like $400 and $500 a piece, and I was just like, I'll get to it eventually. And now we have the trade paperbacks coming out, so I can get to it. Basically, this is about a guy that was on the wrong planet at the right time and ends up becoming a gladiator in this war that is not his war, and he has to navigate planetary courts, he has to fight a war he didn't start, and all of this for an empire he does not love against an enemy he will never understand. Sounds like it's very epic. It does have aliens. I've heard that it is science fiction and fantasy with a heavier science fiction lean, so I am very excited to try this. It is not super short. The writing is teeny tiny, but I'm excited to give it a go. I've heard pretty good things about this, and I know it's like a cult classic in the SFF world. Then we have Wellfall by Daniel Kraus. Honestly, I probably should have waited on some reviews before I bought this book, but I didn't, and here we are. This is about a guy, I believe, who is going through some grief and complicated emotions surrounding his father. He goes deep diving and ends up being swallowed by a whale, and most of the story is him trying to get out of the whale. But I've heard that even though it's marketed as sci-fi horror, it definitely leans more into like his emotions and his like dealings with his father, I believe, more so than the actual science fiction horror side of things. So we'll see if I end up liking it. It is really short, but I'm a little bit more leery now than I was before. Next up, we have one that I've already read, and that is Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. I ended up really liking this. It is following Seago, who is a young boy who is taken captive into an underground like fighting ring, and it's in a science fiction world that uses this ring to basically fight their battles and to decide outcomes of things. People will fight it out, and he ends up getting rescued or taken by one of the members of like the combat codes and taken to an academy where he is going to train. And there were some really good twists in the end of this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it had me very excited to read the sequel. This is actually an indie book that, or a self-published book that was picked up by Orbit. So technically speaking, the whole series is completed, but Orbit is now just publishing them with new covers, and I think that this one was updated a little bit from the previous version. So Reaver's Blood, which is the second book in the series, comes out in November. I already have it pre-ordered, so just we can tack that onto the haul as well. But I'm super excited to read this, and if you like science fiction fantasy and you wanted like the fight type thing that you got from Jade City, I do highly recommend this. This doesn't have the character focus that Jade City does, but definitely has some really good action scenes and combat scenes. I think it was well done. Then we have The Trees The Trees Grew Because I Bled There by Eric LaRocca. This is a novella bind-up, I believe. There's a collection of short stories in here. I have never read anything from Eric LaRocca, and he scares me. I don't know why, but he scares me, and I don't even know what short stories are in here. I know that there is a story about a woman who imagines horrific scenarios while caring for her infant niece. We have a chronicle of a cancer diagnosis, a couple in the park with their small child, and a stranger with horrific consequences, and toxic relationship. So curious to read this one. I just want to give Eric LaRocca a try. I don't know if this is the right place to start though, so if you have a better starting place recommendation, leave it down in the comments below. Next up, we have 3 books that I was sent by the author, and I'm so excited to have because this one is an SPFBO 9 finalist, and I am of course reading all of the finalists. Again, announcement to come on that, but cannot wait to read this book. I mean, like, look at this cover. Look at how incredible this cover is, and he also was very kind to send me books 2 and 3 as well, and I mean, like, look at these covers. Look at how awesome they are. You just can't, I can't get over these. They're so pretty. But basically this says, fear not the beast in your stories, for anything can be slain with a stout blade and a stouter heart. This is following Zintel, who is taken by ancient warrior women, and she is taught to fight, she is taught to kill, she is taught to obtain glory, and she may even find some sisterhood in between. But it says it's the glory that must be earned in the blood of those Zintel once called her own, for the Volcari are not like other women. It almost gives me like Valkyrie vibes, but make it beasts, and I'm very curious to try this one. Bookborn gave it a raving review. She really enjoyed it, and I have all 3, so I cannot wait to get to it. Then we have The Sword Defiant by Gareth Hanrahan, I think is how you say that. This one is one that I was sent by Goldsboro, so it does have the sprayed edges, and that's why the shiny cover is glaring off the ring light. I'm sorry. This is about basically an old washed up warrior who has a sword that can speak to him. It is a sword defiant, and defiant it is. And one day he learns about a terrifying threat, so he decides to get the band back together. If there's one thing he knows, is slaying monsters, even if they used to be his friends. I'm not sure how I feel about this one because, you know, the band getting back together is not really my thing, but I did read the first chapter of this and found it mostly intriguing. I think the sword was really cool, so I'm definitely curious to give it a try. Then we have The Sun and the Void by Gabriela Romero Lacruz. This is the Illumicrate version, I think, and it's so shiny and so pretty. Like, I love it. It's so pretty. This one is about a young woman who is living on the edge of society, and her only way out is to go live with a grandmother that she has never met. But on her way through the forest, she is attacked by the creatures of the forest, and only her grandmother, who is a dark sorceress, is going to be able to save her. And then we also have Eva, who is a daughter of mixed heritage, and magic has always called to her, but she knows that she should resist the dark temptation, but it's just getting harder and harder for her to do. Very curious to see how these two women's stories collide. It did, when I read the first chapter, give me very fairy tale-esque vibes, which can be a good thing or a not so great thing, but I did like the first chapter. I found the world to be very intriguing, and so I'm excited to read this, and you can't deny that the cover is just absolutely gorgeous. Then we have The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is a book that I love. I read this, I devoured this in like 2 days. Absolutely incredible. Highly recommend this. It is following Vis, who is is a orphan now, and you learn more about his heritage as things go on, but this is a world where will is basically the magic that powers everything, and it's inspired by the Roman Empire. And we have this, who is the son of someone important, but he's hiding his heritage, and he is basically living as an orphan right now, when one day he is adopted by a man that wants him to go investigate the death of his brother at this very elite academy. And I just loved the world that was in here. I thought that this book was absolutely incredible. You guys can watch my vlog where I gush about it. I won't do that here, but I highly recommend this, and I think that it was such a cool book with such good characters and an incredible world building and magic system. Then we have another Elise Kova, and that is The Deal with the Elf King. This is one of her more adult fantasy romances. I think this is a standalone in a series, and it's one that I have not heard as good things about as I have some of her other series. And basically the tagline of this is the elves come for two things, war and wives, and in both cases they come for death. And when the main character of this story is requested by the Elf King, she realizes that everything that she's ever known about her life is a lie, and she learns about a dying world that only she can save. Sounds interesting. It's very, very short. I'm curious to try this first one because I did like her Air Awakened series, but we'll see how it goes. And then I have Wings Once Cursed and Bound by Piper J. Drake. I found this just browsing at the bookstore one day. I knew nothing about it. This is an urban fantasy about our main character that lives in Seattle, and she's unaware of like the complicated magical world that brews right under the surface. But she is not actually what she seems either. She has wings unbound. She is a Thai bird princess of legend. And while a curse won't kill her outright, it is only a matter of time. Her world then is uprooted and changed overnight, and she knows one thing for certain: she can't go back to living as a human, not when she's felt what it's like to fly with Bennett by her side. She's determined to keep her wings and her freedom and defy anyone who would take them from her again. It sounds very unique and interesting. Obviously, Bennett is a vampire, I believe. I thought this was a vampire romance, but there's actually nothing on here that says vampire, so maybe I made that up. But either way, birds, magic world, sounds interesting. Excited to give it a try. Then we have The Swordsman's Descent by G.M. White. This was gifted to me by Kendra, so thank you so much, Kendra. It is the sequel to The Sword's Lament, which is about a swordsman of the king who is getting old, and he is then accused of killing the king's son, and it's like a murder mystery to try to figure out who actually killed the king's son. I really liked The Swordsman's Lament. I have not obviously read this one yet, so I'm very excited to have it, and thank you so much to Kendra. Then we have Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano. This is a book about people that are obsessed with the year 1994, I believe. It's a creepy island. Everyone has a strange obsession with the year 1994. A newcomer arrives hoping to learn the truth about her son's death. It is a horror about a woman that comes to the island, finds out that it is really, really weird, and then she disappears, so her brother has come to try to figure out what happened to her. And the truth of the island is far more sinister than he could have ever imagined, and he just has to hope to get out alive. Sorry guys, my camera battery died. This video has been so long that it couldn't make it through. But I think what I was saying was I have heard some very interesting things about this one, that it is a little bit too long, but otherwise might have been a 5-star for some people. So very, very curious and very interested to read this. Next up we have Breath of Fire, which is the sequel to, where did it go? I think I have it sitting over here actually. Yes. Need to haul both of these. A Promise of Blood by Amanda Bouchette. This is book 1, this is book 2. This is a fantasy romance about a soothsayer, and she is captured by one of the princes, and he needs her in order to fight a war. But there is some weird like Greek mythology retelling type aspects of this. It was, I don't know, it was kind of a weird book, but I did like it well enough that I do want to continue. I thought that the magic system was cool with her being like a soothsayer, and I'm curious to continue in this. But I don't know, it was different. She's like a kingmaker, and basically she can tell when people are not telling the truth, and so everyone wants her because it'll really help with political type battles and maneuverings if you can tell if someone is lying. Then we have Furyborn by Claire Legrand. This is a young adult fantasy romance that I've heard really good things about. Obviously Claire Legrand is also going to be at a Polycon along with, I believe, Amanda Bouchette, so this is one that I do really want to get to. And it's about two young women who are centuries apart that hold the power to either save the world or to doom it. And basically it's about a girl that when people try to assassinate her best friend, she exposes herself as one of the prophesized queens, a queen of light and a queen of blood. And these two women like fight a war that is spanning millennia, and it's some kind of like cosmic battle, and their connections will ultimately decide the fate of the world. Haven't read anything really like this before. It does sound very interesting. I've heard that the audiobook audiobook can be a little bit confusing in the beginning, so I will definitely be physically reading this one, but let me know if you enjoyed it down in the comments below. Then we have A Crown of Cold Silver by Alex Marshall. This is a grimdark fantasy that I really have not heard hardly anything about, but I think Rachel had read it and liked it. I've seen it on a couple of lists, so I decided to pick it up. I found it on sale at Books A Million one day, and I know that this is, like I said, a grimdark. It is involving 5 villains in one like ride into battle. It is a vengeance story. The blurb really doesn't give you a whole lot, and this is a chunky book, so I'm like, I don't know how this is gonna go. But I really did like the opening line. It says, "It was all going so nicely right up until the massacre." I thought that that was good. The first chapter was so-so, but I still think I will probably give this a try and maybe use the audiobook for it. I didn't realize that apparently I also had not hauled Blood Mercy. So Blood Mercy is the sequel to Blood Solace. I've already told you guys what this is about, but I'm hauling this one too. This tells you how long it's been since I filmed a book haul. My goodness. Then I also wanted to haul Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. This is a Hunger Games inspired story. It is fantasy. It's about people who are able to basically borrow bodies and jump from body to body to body, and you have to like keep yours on ice essentially until you're able to get back in it. It is definitely a Hunger Games inspired story. It's interesting. There were some pacing issues that I had with this overall and just wanted a lot more in depth, but I read it in one day, and I think doing that definitely helped me because I was able to overlook some of the things that I've read reviews complaining about that I do agree with since reading the reviews, but basically it's just fast-paced and I had a fun time with it. Then we have Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. This is about the last male dragon that decides to become human. I read the first chapter of this. I was not overly thrilled. It says the last male dragon, a desperate thief, a bond that will save the world or shatter it. And I don't know, I just haven't heard amazing things about this one, but that concept sounds really cool, so maybe I will still give it a try. I don't really know, but I am considering unhauling this one after hauling it because of the first chapter. But this is the Goldsboro edition, and it is really, really pretty, so I hate to do that, but I'm just not sure if it's going to be the book for me. And then we have A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. This is about a toxic relationship where these people are fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, but they keep making up. And then one day their latest fight may be their last. Yeah, it says because one more breakup might just be their last. I don't know. Sounds interesting. I have been hit or miss with Samantha Downing. Some I have really enjoyed, some I have not enjoyed at all. So I'm hoping that this one will work for me. It is a couple of book club picks that either have already happened or happening soon. I can't really remember, but I am excited to try it. Maybe I'll get to it during spooky season. The stack is about to come crumbling down. But we are almost there. Next up, I have Judas Blossom by Stephen Aran. This is a Persian-inspired fantasy, and it is following a couple of characters. One, Khan, that is trying to fulfill his grandfather's wishes, Temujin, who is a youngest son and is given the final chance to prove himself, Kokian, who is the last of her tribe, and Kavion, who despises the Mongols for the massacre of his people. So it is set in 1260s Persia, so I think it is a historical inspired fantasy, and I don't know, it sounds really different. I'm curious to see what 1260 Persia looks like, and so I will be giving this one a try. Then we have A Starbringer by Tracy Wolff and Nina Croft. This is one of the Red Tower books, and they're the same people that published Fourth Wing, so I really wanted to give this one a try. I have not read Tracy Wolff's Crave series. This is a sci-fi romance, and so I've not read many sci-fi romances, and I wanted to give this one a go. It's about a world where the sun is dying and it's happening really, really fast, and 9 planets' only hope for survival is located on a space station and an alien artifact that it's carrying. Every faction of the galaxy is now haunting the ship because apparently the only thing standing between a dying sun and ultimate salvation is 7 unlikely misfits. Heroes. That description sounds interesting, but it also gives me quirky vibes, and quirky vibes scare me, you know the drill, but I am curious. I've not read a lot of science fiction romance, so I do want to give this one a try, but I've really not heard anybody talk about it. The stack is very precarious. Next up, we have The Frozen Crown by Greta Kelly. This is one, again, that I just saw in the bookstore one day. It sounded interesting, and I did decide to pick it up. It's about a princess with a powerful and dangerous secret, and she must find a way to save her country from ruthless invaders. It sounds a little bit political. The back says that there is a glittering court where secrets are worth more than gold, so I am curious to try this. It was when I was looking for Harper Voyager books and just happened to see it in the bookstore, and I was like, oh, sounds pretty good, gets good reviews, we'll give it a go. Then we have The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence. This is the first in the Book of the Ice series, which follows the Book of the Ancestor. I think we may be continuing on into this series in Backlist Book Club after we finish the Book of the Ancestor, and I've heard that this first one does read a little bit more young adult, but after that, those books have been blowing people out of the water, and I am so excited to read this. Like, I don't think you have to read the Book of the Ancestor before getting to this one, but I do think that it helps. And basically, this is following a tribe that lives on the ice rather than Nona, who still lives kind of in the world where the ice is not completely overtaken yet. And it's about Yaz, and her people live near something called the Pit of the Missing, and it's always been like drawing her in, but her being different tears her away from the family that she's always known and from the boy that she thought she would spend her life with. She learns that one of the men is older and a stranger than she ever imagined. She learns that her weaknesses are another kind of strength, and she has a survival that has governed her people and can be challenged. Like I said, I know that this one involves mostly the ice, and I am very curious to see what book 2 is all about, because I've heard that it has broken some people and I want to know. So very, very, very excited, if I haven't said that already, to get to this series. And then last but not least, a little bent on the top up here, is Silver Nitrate. This is the Illumicrate version by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. It's got sprayed edges kind of going around, and then the naked hardcover is really pretty. This is the Evernight box edition. And it is about a woman in film. I think it's historical as well. What time period is this set in? The 90s Mexico City. And she has always been kind of overlooked in the film industry. And there is obviously a horror movie. And apparently there was a horror movie that had missing scenes involving a Nazi occultist. And basically the director wants her to help him shoot the missing scenes and lift the curse that has come from this. It says the closer they come to unraveling the mystery of the film and the obscure occultist who once roamed Mexico City, the closer she and Tristan come to learning that sorcerers are magic and not only the stuff of movies. I've heard mixed things about this one, but overall positive, so I am curious to give it a try. I want to try to stay up to date on the Evernight box editions, although this one was the July box and I still haven't read it yet, so I need to get on that. And really quickly, the couple of fantasy that I don't think that I have hauled, but were sent to me by the authors, so I definitely wanted to show them off to you guys. The first is Origin's Curse by Sarah Kate Ishii. This is obviously involving a realm that now has a curse on them, and it says a curse placed on a noble family in the East has unraveled the fragile dynasty codes across the world. As Yoski's power blessing helps to bring a peace to her people, or in the folk tales of old, is she cursed to seek vengeance and watch the world burn. It sounds really interesting. I did read the first chapter of this. The curse sounded cool. It was more like a prologue, but I'm curious to give it a go. And then we have Heliotrope by Palmer Pickering. This is in the SPFBO 9 right now. It is fighting to be a finalist. It is a chunky boy, but I've heard that it is a slow burn epic fantasy involving a lot of good character development. It says Tilo is a retired soldier descending from mages who were cast out of power generations ago. After war and sorrow, he wants nothing more than to live a quiet life on his farm and just work his stonesman's craft. But as he's working on a stone mosaic for the queen, he finds himself in the middle of a coup. Sounds interesting. I like this cover, and this author is absolutely like incredible and precious, and we all need to read it. Then we have The Elementals by Abby Lanzino, and this was sent to me by the publisher. It is about 4 lost princes and 1 corrupt uncle, and obviously involves elemental magic. It sounded really cool, so I wanted to give it a go. Then we have The Hunter's Lament by Steve Panett. This was also sent to me by the author, so thank you so much for that. And it is about an infamous bounty hunter that is eager to tie up loose ends and, against his better instincts, accepts the contract and sets out in search of a fugitive crown prince. What could possibly go wrong? Then we have Return of the Knights by Gregory Kontaxis. This is, again, one of the ones that was entered into SPFBO 9 this year. It is not going to be a finalist, but I do still really want to read it. And it is a more classic style fantasy involving the Palace of Dawn that will soon be stormed. And it says that it is Game of Thrones meets Greek mythology. So sounds very interesting. I am excited to read this. He also just released the cover of a new novella in this world that I really like as well. And then last but not least, we have Thieves of Shadows by BSH Garcia. This again was an SPFBO 9 and was sent to me by the author. I am very, again, excited to read this. I do still plan to read even non-finalists from SPFBO because I have found some amazing semi-finalists and just books that were entered entered and didn't win. Not always winning doesn't mean that the books are bad. It's just trying to like get exposure out there, and it is a very subjective competition. This one says some secrets are best left to the shadows, but shadows have a mind of their own. You know me, I love shadow magic. This is one of my favorite covers entered this year, and I'm very excited to give this one a try. Okay guys, so I think that that is everything. How many books was this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, roughly 43 books. I'm sure that there is something in this stack that's hiding that I can't see to count, but like 43, 45 books? I need to start doing book hauls before 3 or 4 months later. Ouch. I think we've been here for like 45 minutes talking. I'm gonna try to cut some of this out in editing, but thank you guys if you have stuck with me this long for watching. I hope that your Starbucks is not cold. If you just want to let me know that you were here, leave me a mind blown emoji, because my mind is blown by how many books that I have bought in the last 3 months. Or just tell me to stop it. Tell me to stop buying books. It's not going to happen, but you could try. As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all linked down in the description box below. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.